Hello, I am Brent Andrew, and this is the Seven Years' War. So, to talk about the Seven Years' War, we have to first cover the War of Prussian Succession, which was between 1740 to 1748. And this began with the Holy Roman Emperor Charles VI passing away and his daughter Maria Theresa being named his successor. So, a man by the name of Frederick the Great in Prussia didn't agree with this, so he quoted Salic law, which was pretty much, you're a woman, you can't be named successor of titles this massive, like Archduchess of Austria, as well as Holy Roman Empress. He wasn't named Holy Roman Empress until 1745, but he declared war in 1740 with the help of France, and to get power by conquering Austria, so he could be named Holy Roman Emperor, but that didn't really pan out. And so the Treaty of Aix-la-Chapelle was signed in 1748, and in this time, Prussia captured Silesia, which is really big, really huge, vital region of Austria, which is very fertile land, really good for agriculture. And France wanted to get a deal with this, but it didn't happen. The Treaty of Aix-la-Chapelle left Silesia in the hands of Prussia, and France didn't really get much out of this. So France changed their alliance to the Treaty of Versailles, which is now Austria and France. And then the Convention of Westminster was formed because since alliances switched and Great Britain was an ally of Austria, who was with Teresa, King George II is now with Frederick the Great in the Convention of Westminster, and the Treaty of Versailles is now France and Austria. So this made its way to Russia with Elizabeth I, who also didn't like Prussia and didn't like Great Britain. So she joins the Treaty of Versailles to get Eastern Prussian territories as her reason to join the war. France wanted to meet Great Britain in their colonial strength because they're kind of like the really boring cousin. And Austria wanted Silesia back. So the colonial powers at this point are Great Britain and France, and they're fighting two sides of the war in the Americas as well as in Europe. So France is already fighting two sides of the war, and Britain is focusing most of their military in the Americas because their navy is so strong. They'll be fine with any invasion from the English Channel by France, and it's France. So Frederick was hoping that Great Britain would cut off supply lines, which they did because they had such a strong navy, and he realized that would be the case. So him being surrounded by France, Austria, and Russia on all sides, he decides to make a move south before he gets invaded by Austria to Saxony. So he captures Saxony, has a defense by France against France and Austria and France try to make a joint effort to invade Prussia, but this didn't really work out. They lost both battles. Both their armies lost their battles, but Austria got Silesia back from Prussia, and Russia was making moves on Eastern Prussian territories, which they wanted, but since they were in war, they would just might as well just go, hey, let's go to Berlin and let's end this thing. So the miracle of the House of Brandenburg happened when Russians and French were unsuccessful in defeating Prussia entirely for some reason, because they won at Kunersdorf, which was a city very close to Berlin and was vital to everything. It was like one of the biggest cities in Prussia at the time. And for some reason, they decided not to go all the way to Berlin and just went out entirely. And a lot of skeptics blame this on Louis XV's indecisiveness, I guess militarily, that led to their defeat. And the war still carrying on for this long. So, I mean, with France spread so thin, losing battles at sea across the Atlantic, and also fighting in the Americas as well, they didn't really have the manpower to just didn't have the manpower. Austria wasn't winning any battles because Maria Theresa, she didn't really have all that much experience in military conflict, and just Russia as well didn't have the manpower to do it. So, but Sweden was also a part of this, kind of, and they fought the Pomeranian War, which it's Pomeranian because it's small, little, fluffy. It wasn't all that big, so that wasn't really a big deal. It was just kind of a sub-war to this, and then this led to some sort of a standstill between 1760 to 1762. So the European theater was kind of just everybody waiting around, waiting for something to happen. So we can move on to the Indian theater of the Seven Years' War, which is again against Britain and France, colonial powers. They're trying to make a monopoly on the spice trade. Huge thing, just make money, because if you make money, you have to get trading ships, warships, everything. So you have warships, you can defend your trade routes, and then you can make money to make more warships to defend your trade routes. So the Indian theater was huge in this, so they can make the money to build the warships to defend their trade routes, they make more money. So since Britain and France were both in India with their assigned East India companies, the British East India Company and the French East India Company, Britain decided to end this and just to make the monopoly and have a monopoly over the spices. So in 1761, they were victorious in the French East India Company's capital of Wadawash. So they seized that monopoly and officially made it theirs. And this was in 1761, so it took about a year and a half of fighting for that to pan out and become true. So if we moving back to the European theater, France was still getting spanked like brutally by the British Navy at sea, and didn't have that much success on the continent either. And so we already heard about the miracle of the House of Brandenburg. Just really lucky that King Louis didn't pull the trigger on that. So another really lucky thing that happened in Frederick the Great's favor is that the Tsar of Russia died. Elizabeth passed away, health issues, and of course she would have a German nephew by the name of Peter III, who was pretty much Frederick the Great's #1 fanboy. So Frederick the Great and Peter III, they signed the Treaty of St. Petersburg in 1762, which helped Frederick immensely because he didn't have to fight that side of the war anymore, and it just withdrew Russia completely. So Sweden did this shortly after to get out of the war completely with the Treaty of Hamburg, and that's where Sweden's part of this ends completely. The Pomeranian War happened. It wasn't much. But of course, a new challenger approaches. Spain. King Ferdinand dies. He passed away. His successor is his half-brother, Charles III. So Charles sides with France in this side of the war, but he didn't attack Prussia or Britain. He just wanted a reason to colonize Portugal, because Portugal suffered from a earthquake in 1755, which left them completely crippled, and they decided to reconstruct completely instead of militarize, because they didn't expect Spain to invade them. So the Fantastic Four happened. French and Spanish forces moved into Portugal, trying to destroy them and colonize them and just capture Portugal for themselves. This didn't happen. There was a lot of deaths on the French and Spanish side because of hunger and disease and just no morality, because France was spread so thin, and Spain just dying from disease and hunger. So there was one, but going back to France, really this is embarrassing for France. So military advisor by the name of Choiseul, he decides to make one last push to win the war or get back in the war and make a big statement. He decided to invade the mainland of Great Britain by sea, of all things, by sea, because that's the only way. So he decided this was a great idea. Wasn't a great idea. French Navy was absolutely demolished by the British Navy before they were halfway across the English Channel to get to the British mainland. So this led to the Treaty of Hubertsburg in 1763 and the Treaty of Paris in 1763. It was two treaties. Well, I guess 4 treaties. to finalize the war in Europe. So yeah, that's 7 Years' War.